Okay, here we are with column 7, understanding modes. Now, modes are a thing that a lot of people talk about. A lot of people are sort of excited and enthusiastic about getting into playing with modes, playing modally. But sometimes it's hard to understand what that means. And I want to just give you a brief little primer on modes and what they mean right here. It's explained in some detail in the book, and I hope that it makes sense in the way I wrote it out. Basically, to understand what modes are a way of playing music where it has a certain sound, a certain kind of flavor, if you will. And each mode has its own different sound. You're probably somewhat familiar with this concept in the fact that you can at least understand the difference between a major sound and a minor sound. If we're playing major chords, that song would sound, in a sense, sort of happy. If we play minor, that sounds kind of sad. Could be even evil if you put it to a heavy metal beat, right? Okay, so you understand the difference there. That's the basic concept of the difference in modes. Only modes takes it a little further. Now, major and minor are two modes, okay? But there are 7 modes, and guess what? They match up with those diatonic scale patterns. If you learn those diatonic scale patterns, you're well on your way to being at least capable of playing modally. And you can do some pretty cool stuff with modes, and in some cases, if you want to cover a certain musical style, you need to understand modes, even just a little bit, okay? So here again, I'm going to just kind of give a quick primer on that, okay? Here's the thing. When you learn your 7 diatonic scale patterns, you have already learned all the modes there are, believe it or not, okay? The concept then is to understand how to take those scales and make them sound either major, which is in itself a mode, or minor, which is in itself a mode, or the other modes that are a little bit more exotic sounding, shall we say, such as Phrygian and Dorian and Mixolydian. Maybe you've heard these names before, okay? Here's a concept that I learned from Joe Satriani in a video I produced with Joe a bunch of years ago. And it was a pretty cool concept where he showed me a way of practicing modes. And I want to show you this right now to maybe give you a better understanding of how it works and how it sounds, how the modes work and sound, not just the exercise, okay? But his concept was this. Since he already knows how to play in modes, and he already knows how to play in all kinds of other exotic, really cool scales, what he would do is take his low E string, strum that E string, and then play a scale over the top of it. Not a scale, he would play a riff, he'd play a little guitar solo, and then he would hit that low E string again and play another little guitar solo as long as that E string was rolling, was playing. And what he would do was each time he hit that E string, he would play in a different mode. And by doing this, once you become capable of doing something like this, you really can start to hear the difference in the flavor of these modes. For example, I'll hit that E and I'll play E major. Now I'm going to hit the E again and play E minor. Okay? Now I'll hit the E again and I'll play E minor pentatonic. Okay? Now I'll hit that E again and I'll play E major pentatonic. So you're hearing the difference in these modes. Those are just the major and minor modes. What if I hit the E again and I play Phrygian? Phrygian has that kind of Spanish sound to it. There's different sounds, different flavors with these modes. And each of these modes is built on those 7 diatonic scale patterns. Each pattern is not only the major key that you were just playing in, it's not only also the relative minor, I talked about that. Each pattern simultaneously could be used as the Phrygian mode, the Dorian mode, the Lydian, the Mixolydian, all these different modes, okay? Read the book, read the chapter to try to understand that a little bit better. As you get better and better with your diatonic scales, start experimenting, and the idea is if you take a scale pattern and you play it, normally you're supposed to know where's my root note in this pattern. For example, if we play the scale C major, C is the root note. What if you change it? What if you play the same exact scale pattern at the same exact fret, but you think of the note E as your root note? Now you're playing an E Phrygian. In other words, you play a C major scale, but you treat it as if E was the root note. That's E Phrygian. Okay? You see the concept? This is something to explore. It requires that you know your scale patterns. Okay? Learn those scale patterns. Learn those diatonics. Okay.